Hello, this is Michael Roberts of Corinth, Texas, and I will be doing a short presentation on the Synoptic Gospels, the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. What are the Synoptic Gospels? Well, they are the Gospels written by Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John, however, is not one of the Synoptic Gospels. Matthew, Mark, and Luke have used each other's writings to write their books. The Markian priority. Most scholars agree that Mark was written first. Mark was written 65 to 70 AD, while Matthew was 75 to 85 AD, Luke 80 to 90 AD. 90% of Mark is used in Matthew and Luke. There is a synoptic problem. There are small differences in the writings, as well as differences in telling some of the stories. Most of the differences are grammatical, and Matthew and Luke seem to clean up some of the language that Mark was using. Mark was much younger and was not versed at writing the way Matthew and Luke were. Stories are also viewed from different perspectives. An example of that would be if there was a car wreck and 6 of us were witnesses. 6 of us would have our own 6 unique views. There might be some details that are different. However, the baseline that there was a car wreck and these were the cars involved would always be the same. So why is John different? John writes in a different perspective. He writes about Jesus' deity. John presents Jesus as God in the flesh, and his perspective is from the top down. Also, John's writing is completely embedded in Jewish culture. It's not necessarily chronological, but it is filled with culture and festivals. Jesus, the teacher. Jesus' teachings are observed in the Gospels more than any other ministry. Jesus had certain characteristics of his teachings. Jesus' teachings had authority. Jesus' hearers were astonished because he taught them as one who had authority. An example of that was when he was 12 and was in the temple teaching the leaders. They were astonished at the authority that he taught with. It also had effectiveness. Even though effectiveness is hard to measure for a teacher, we are still talking about his teachings today, and even non-Christians respect the teachings of Jesus. His teaching definitely had skill. But the skill Jesus had came from the power of Jesus. It is his deity and his redemptive grace. And Jesus taught with unique methods. He used parables, metaphorical stories, using everyday events and imagery. When we read the parables today, sometimes they can be a little confusing to us, but in the time of Jesus, the Jewish people would be able to relate to those stories and imagery very easily and quickly. He used proverbs. The earliest believers were always used to proverbs from the Old Testament. So Jesus used proverbs as well. And he used the question method. This is called for direct and active participation in the issue at hand. This method is still used by teachers today in the questioning method. The true effectiveness of Jesus' teaching comes from who he is, God in human form. This is why Jesus was the perfect teacher.